Hey there. So lots has been said so far about the total solar eclipse, and it's coming up on Monday the 8th. Now, one of the things that I haven't done so far is look at it from the perspective of what asteroids are playing into this. And that's something I like to do each month, is look at the new moon and the full moon, and now also the eclipses from the perspective of which asteroids, mythical, named, or otherwise, are playing into the energies of this particular event. I always think the asteroids give a completely new feel for, a particular chart. One of the reasons why I like asteroids so much. So, for instance, most likely you know what your birth chart looks like, right? So you know where your sun, your moon, and everything all fits together. But like if you were to put health asteroids in, maybe Hygeia, like Ceres is quite useful in terms of health and nurturing and looking after yourself. And you could put in like a set of health asteroids, or maybe you might choose love asteroids. You might put in Amor, Psyche, Eros, Tantalus. You might put in ones to do with houses or talent or anything that you choose. And whenever you put a set of asteroids into a chart, it gives you a whole deeper look at your birth chart from a new perspective. So, I see it as almost like the clothing that you put on. So your birth chart is your body. This is just like, this hasn't been like said in astrological journals or anything like that. This is just my homespun philosophy on it. But I really, really feel like, your birth chart is your body, and then your asteroids can show how you dress it up, or how you might want to come across on that particular day, or have a look at yourself in a particular astrological sitting. So at the time of a new or full moon, I go to a really great site called serenu.com, SERENNU.com. In fact, it's in the description below. In fact, all of the websites that I use regularly, because they're easy to use, they're free, and they're completely available to everybody that might watch this channel. All of the details are below. So timeanddate.com, serenu.com, astroseek, and astro.com. They're my top faves. Anyway, I digress. So Monday, we've got the total solar eclipse, which is a new moon in Aries, and it's exactly in a conjunction with Chiron. Now, for those of you that follow the channel, you'll know that I often do something about Cazimis. So, for instance, in November, I did something about Mars Cazimi. And the Cazimi definition is, when does a planet get heated up in the heart of the sun? It's like, so the planets are coming together, usually because one is moving faster than the other, and the sun is often the fastest mover, not always, if we're thinking of moon or Mercury. But so the sun approaches a planet. They come into a complete alignment, like an exact conjunction. And during that moment, that planet becomes quite strong because it's got the heart of the sun behind it. If you think about holding a torch behind your hand, you can move it around, but then there's this magic moment when all of a sudden the outside of your fingers starts to glow really bright red, like a bright red pink color. And I always think of the heart of the sun as being like that. There is this magic moment where all of a sudden it is illuminated. So the energies of that planet are illuminated. Now, technically a new moon has a Cazimi effect. The moon and the sun are together in the exact moment. Now, obviously, with the full definition of Cazimis, I've gone into those in previous videos. In particular, I think, crikey, which one was it? Mercury Cazimi. I did a big sort of deep dive on that, and gave a quite a full description of it. And Pluto as well. I went into quite some effort there. Coming into the Cazimi and leaving the Cazimi, when there is 17 minutes of arc difference between the sun and the particular planet, it's said to be in the Cazimi. But from 8 degrees, and when there's a difference between more than 17 minutes of arc up to 8 degrees, the planet is said to be a little bit weaker. Now, if we think about what's been going on, I can talk in terms of my own practice. What kind of things have been happening at Feel Good Astrology? Well, over the last couple of weeks, as we've been coming through this Chiron this slightly weaker Chiron, because he's under the beams, what I've noticed is that people are starting to get very, very conscious of things not feeling right. Even, my husband and I, we've been noticing old patterns coming up, and they floored us for a moment or two, or for half a day, where all of a sudden we feel really odd, really off, and are wondering what's going on. Like maybe our communications aren't quite hitting correctly, they're not quite connecting. And of course, we've got Mercury retrograde through this area at the same time. So there are some very, very big healing things going on. What I noticed around the time of, in fact, when Neptune was coming into the Cazimi, was that our natural sense of intuition seemed a bit off. And, when it was under the beams, it seemed easier to actually intuit things through your whole body. So that's actually how my experience is of this, Chiron under the beams currently. It feels like I can't quite access it in my conscious mind. I can't quite describe what's going on, but I totally feel it in my body. And that has been, I've really heard that again and again and again. Sort of healing stuff's coming up, raw ancestral stuff's coming up. It's just bubbling up to be released. And, many of you watching this channel will be really familiar with that kind of energy and are probably working on it actively, judging from the comments and messages that I get. People are already working on their stuff. So, this is a very, very dynamic time. In the lead up, there has been some soreness noted within the community, some feelings of tenderness and vulnerability. I do think that at the time of the Chiron Cazimi, which is also the time of the new moon, which is a Cazimi, we have this very strong releasing energy. And it is releasing in terms of how we heal, how we let go of the past, because we've also got the nodes involved. But it's not so much letting go of the past as it is like we're not purging the past. What we're doing is we're not focusing on it. It's like our focus is changing. This particular total solar eclipse is attached to the North Node. So whilst we are moving through our healing, it's less about cutting away from the past, but more about locking and loading onto a new direction and recognizing that where you currently are and where you've been on your journey has been kind of dragging you back, almost as if, and this happens to me quite a lot because I'm quite clumsy, I might be wearing a rucksack and oversized coats and scarves and all sorts of things hanging off me, and I walk through a doorway and I get something that I'm wearing caught on the door frame or on the door handle, and I'm trying to move forwards and I can't because I'm held back. So instead, what we're actually doing is saying, okay, well, let's not walk through doors with tons of coats on, and we just drop it and just we walk through, not knowing where we're going, but we walk through with a sense of it has to be like this. So I really do feel that this is one of the hallmarks. Now let's have a look at the planetary coding. I'm not going to go too deeply into that part because I've covered it before, but this is more like a refresher before I look at the actual asteroids. The named asteroids are playing into this chart energy, and let's see what comes up. Okay, so here's the chart then for the total solar eclipse stroke new moon in Aries. It's exact, and these are all UK time zones. I'm not in the UK, I'm in Lisbon in Portugal, but we're in exactly the same time zone as the UK. I always use London as a base point because, accordingly, all the other time zones are either so many hours ahead or so many hours behind. So it is the midpoint. And you can, if you want to convert it into your own time zone, if you go to timeanddate.com and look up their meeting planners, if you put in London and that time and then put in your own time zone, it will convert it for you. All you really need to know is what the difference is. Are you like 4 hours ahead or 4 hours behind, and then just adjust accordingly. Okay, so like I said, look at this area here. It's so busy, right? So like I said, we've got the sun and the moon and Chiron all together at the same time. The North Node's a few degrees away, and then we've also got Mercury retrograde. So this is a very, very intense area. Now, let's add in the sort of Mercury retrograde energy as well. So whatever is going on, and however we're unraveling ourselves to be able to step forwards into the future, it's involving our minds unraveling, so we're not doing it with the same thinking that we're usually doing things with. We are thinking differently. That is the thing that is absolutely moving us forwards and helping us to create a new future for ourselves. So what is required right now is to lessen the sort of dominant thinking that you lead with, because it might not be right. And I think it's always worth a bit of scrutiny, isn't it? Now, how do we find out that, some of our thoughts aren't maybe helping us? Well, I would, the first thing that I would ask myself, and I regularly do it, is how can I feel more joy right now? Does this feel joyful for me? Does this feel good for me? In my experience, I noticed that when I put information through the filter of how it feels in my body, I get a very sort of clear sense of that is right, that is not right. If there's any feeling of dissonance, if there's any feeling of stirring, it's usually not an actual truth, but it's an opinion that I've picked up, or it's something that's working in me. There's lots of things out there that are designed to stimulate us and to get us into a story. I mean, you could argue that me practicing astrology and sharing it is getting you into the story of let's release the past and heal the future, or heal the now and go off into the future. And if so, I'm kind of pleased about that, because I think that's a helpful thing. However, it's not for everyone. So what I would say is, with everything that you're feeling stirred up by, sit with it and ask yourself, is it true? And really focus on how it feels in your body. If it feels right, it probably is true. If you're feeling stirred and mangled and chewed up inside, then there's something going on that is not true. There is something going on that is not working for your overall peace, because peace doesn't feel like that. Peace is peaceful. When something is really sort of true and certain, there's a sense of release, and it might not be a happy release. It might be an acceptance, which is like, okay, I see I can't really change this. This has happened, and yet it's still the truth. And there is a sense of acceptance. And what I really get with this Mercury retrograde in the conjunction with Chiron is, we are asked, can we accept the truth as it shows up? And where we're feeling stirred up and churned up, we're really not. We're really wanting to change what already is, if that makes sense. And if you're trying to change what already is, you're kind of fighting with reality. And again, you might then ask yourself, how useful is it for me to fight with the reality as it presents itself right now? I honestly think we're more resourceful when we can get ourselves in the best feeling place, which is why it's called feel good astrology. I don't want you to feel bad. I want you to, be able to check in with yourself and find out, are you feeling in peace or not? And if not, how can we move there? So I see this as a really pinnacle part of this year ahead, as I've said many times. And if you look at the other astrologers, they're all saying the same pretty much. So yeah, it's big. It's a huge healing event. And here's the other thing, if you believe that we are part of a collective, that we're all connected to each other by being humans, by being living, breathing, spiritual beings in a flesh suit, then, in light of the sort of connectivity, I think as many of us are releasing our own stuff from the past, like letting it go and accepting it, realizing we can't change anything, but what we can change is how we feel about it. And as people are collectively getting these things off their shoulders, it creates so much more of a healing rush for everybody else. And I think, many people are aware of it, they're sensing it, they're ready for it. And then there'll be lots of people who recognize that they have that feeling that something may just change, and it sends them in a massive spin. So I think there's a lot of sort of panic, there's all sorts. I heard from a client yesterday who's had like mentally unwell people visiting in their practice. I won't describe it, but there are there are many unhinged people around at the moment, and as many as there are, I think there are many healed people or healing people, people who are absolutely finding their path. Because that's the other question I would ask yourself: are you on your right path? Because if you are on your right path, everything will flow. Now, sometimes we do get that feeling that we're on our right path, and yet it's a struggle. We feel we have to push on, and it's like, it's like, why is this not working? And then, I've since come to realize that when we have to push, it maybe feels like it's the right path, but it's quite led by the ego. But once you kind of let go of whatever it is that you've made that path mean, then all of a sudden you do find yourself on that right path, because your expression clears up and you feel that sense of release. And so I think there are many people, in fact, there's loads of people I'm connecting with right now who really do feel like they're on a right path, because life is getting easier, not harder. I mean, we still live in a 3D reality. We still have bills to pay and family relations to negotiate and things like that. And yet it's markedly easier. So, these are some ways of working out, are you, heading in the right direction? Are you on or off path? And then use some questions to get yourself back into that perfect state of feeling peaceful in yourself. Now, the last question I would ask is, who does this belong to? And I think this is really, really useful. It's not my question. I'd love to be able to put up my hand and say, wow, check out this great question. But I learnt the power of it from Access Consciousness and my good friend Sarah, who practices Access Consciousness. So who does this belong to? Anytime you're feeling that sense of, wow, I'm really triggered here. Wow, that's a really intense emotion. Where's that come from? Ask yourself, who does this belong to? Now, if all of a sudden you feel lighter, it's not yours. Whatever you've been feeling, it's something that you've walked past somebody and picked up something, or you've been on the phone to your mum or dad or something, and all of a sudden something from the past comes up, and it's like an expectation that they have of you. And who does this belong to? Oh, it's not mine. Oh, okay. Well, return to sender with love and peace and consciousness. So ask yourself those questions, and I think that will help. And this is the thing with Mercury retrograde. It's really assisting us. It's not here to make it harder. It's here to help us ask the right questions so that we can move forwards. Now, one of the asteroids that I've already got in, because I always use her, and that's Ceres. So she is in this tight square. So, Ceres is about nurturing. She's Mother Nature. She's like Demeter. She is in tune with all of the cycles of nature. And obviously with cycles of nature, we have these rises, where we've got spring coming up and summer, and it comes to its culmination, then it starts to die back and we get autumn and winter. So she's all about the cycles of life and growth, and that, it's not natural to be on this steady, even keel. In fact, when we manage our life like that, we're really hurting ourselves. I know rationally it makes sense, but, if you look everywhere else in nature, things change, they evolve, they grow, they move, they don't stay the same. In fact, staying the same is like denying the reality that things change. And when you're denying reality, you're not living and growing, you're actually stagnating without even meaning to. And so that's another thing that I think is kind of interesting about modern day life. We're encouraged to stay stable and on an even keel, and not recognize and welcome the ups, and also welcome the downs as well. Because the interesting thing with the downs is they're always clearing us to come up again, but in a new way, a bit like the waves are coming in. I live by the ocean, I'm always seeing the tides are coming in and then they're going out. And the moons and all these cycles, we are observing the cycle of the total solar eclipse. There is this waxing moon and then a waning moon. Things are always changing and moving. We've also got these three very powerful conjunctions. The Venus-Neptune one is already coming in. The Mars conjunct Saturn one is coming in. And then the Jupiter conjunct Uranus one is happening later this month. It's exact on the 21st, but we're already in the energies of it. And the Jupiter-Uranus one here is in a lovely sextile with Mars and Saturn, giving us so much insight on the one hand, and then the determination, application, and we're able to use these energies practically. Now, I did mention the Cazimi power moments. So obviously the Chiron is going to be warmed by the heart of the sun, as if the light is shining through Chiron. That, I think, is an absolute radiant moment where, we might actually have the thought that actually I am okay. I've always been okay. And actually, when I've not been okay, it's because I've forgotten that maybe I'm a child of God or a child of the universe, however you want to put it. I've forgotten that I might be a spiritual being. And so that, I think, is quite helpful. That exact moment is at 28 minutes past 7 in the evening. This is, again, London time. The Cazimi starts at 12:07 p.m. on the 8th and ends at 2:50 a.m. on the 9th. But this exact point at 1928 is really powerful. That's absolutely in the heart. In terms of the moon, that is exact with the sun at 1921 on the 8th. But in terms of the actual maximum of the eclipse, that actually happens at 17 minutes past 7 in the evening on the 8th. So, these timings are really tight to have the sun and the moon and Chiron all sort of coalescing at this very exact point at the same time is incredible. So these times really span from 17 minutes past 7 in the evening to 28 minutes past 7 in the evening. So it's a window of 11 minutes of absolute power. Now, would I say sit down with your intention books and whatnot, or do some kind of active ritual? I don't know. I mean, the energy is so powerful. I would actually, if I was in your shoes, I think I would spend this weekend considering how I'm changing and kind of giving thanks for all the changes I've gone through, and then thinking, okay, what am I committing to right now? I would not put in something about I'm letting go of the past because, or I've moved away from evil and abuse, or I'm letting go of poverty. I would just say, I embrace abundance. I am absolutely enjoying life to the fullest. Life comes to me and consciousness flows through me. I'm aware of who I am. I feel self-awareness, and it brings me joy and connection with other like-minded beings. I'm so happy in life. So I would write something to that effect. And focus in on it leading up to this very special time. And then at this time, I think I would do something just to experience joy, just experience real focused joy. So your joy in that moment are kind of fused together. And then it becomes easy. And again, like, you can find your time zone, like, where is this happening? So these are in the London, UK time. But if you go to timeanddate.com and use their meeting planner for your time zone, you'll get to the heart of it. Okay, so the asteroids. There's a lot that are going in, and you'll see that there's this sort of very interesting square formed, a grand square. And they are really quite dynamic. I remember the grand square, I think, of 2015, where we had Pluto, Jupiter, Mars, and then a whole range of different Pluto, Uranus, Jupiter, and then a range of personal planets all moving into that fourth spot. Boy, was that intense that summer. So we've got Echeclus, who is he's known as a centaur, and I'm not going to go into the big story, but things come at him in his face, and so things are really in your face at this time. You can't avoid them. And he is also associated with time perspectives, where the past is impacting on the present and the present is impacting on the future. So there's this understanding of the timeline that you're on. So with a Echeclus in a very tight square with this whole area of change and transformation, that's really giving us a greater sense of the perspective and the enormity that people are going through right now. It really is in their face, so much so that you can't ignore it. I mean, you can ignore things for quite a while, but when they're right up in front of you, all of a sudden you have to do something about it. So I think it's absolutely in your face. Now, interestingly, we've also got Ceres, which is in opposition. So, we've got this sort of this observance that, oh my God, things are intense, things are coming up, I'm remembering stuff. I don't always feel that easy. So it's in your face, and the sort of like timeline is is there. But we've also got Ceres as well in opposition to that and in a square to this. Again, Ceres is about nurturing and the cycles of life. She is also about the grief patterns. So, where we observe that something's happened that hasn't quite worked for us, we can grieve it, we can let it go, we can move beyond it. It's very much about parenting and raising children. I always think it's about raising us. So, it's in our face, and now we actually have to do something about it. Ceres is saying, well, I help nature, and nature blossoms while it's meant to, and then it might struggle. And I give nature everything it needs. If you are wanting to thrive in this world, you are going to have to nurture yourself at some point. And if we're lucky, we have parents that nurture us and raise us to be able to do that for ourselves. But not everyone has that experience. So this is where we have to go into a place of self-parenting, because it's in our face and we can't ignore it anymore. And we realize it's our responsibility to look after ourselves. So I think this is a real key point. These patterns are really, whilst they might feel heavy and dense, they're also releasing us. Then we've also got Urania. Now, she is in an opposition to this point of intensity. Now, she is heavenly. Urania is the goddess of astronomy and astrology. So I often use her. These numbers, by the way, are the numbers that help you find these asteroids. So, for instance, if you go to astro.com, which is where I would go for these, go to astro.com, and right at the bottom, you can add in additional bodies into your chart. And so if you type in 30, you'll get Urania. There's a whole listing. There's like 20,000 odd names, and you can go through a whole list of them. It takes a while, but if you know what you're looking for, it's great. So Urania, asteroid number 30, is very much about divination and seeing the light, being connected to the light. It's almost like you know the future. You are so intensely connected to it. So she's in opposition. It's almost, as I read this, it's like as you recognize it's in your face and as you start to look after yourself, the pain kind of lessens. You become a master, which is ultimately what Chiron is there for. Chiron shows us what is stopping us from mastering our own energies, what is stopping us from coming up out of vulnerability into a place of strength. Chiron is there showing us the two sides, vulnerability to almost impermeability, but he's showing us how to become a coach and a mentor for ourselves. And as we have worked on this energy, because it's in our face, and we are giving back to ourselves, then all of a sudden we are able to understand that we are a being of light, or however you have it in your map of the world, but it's lightening up. This lightness, this freeness, this sense of knowing, inner knowing. We can connect back into our inner knowing when we're not being triggered all the time, because when we are triggered, we're in a fight or flight, or maybe freeze and fawn. Also, we rely heavily on all of those tried and tested strategies that have worked for us in the past. Now, they're not necessarily working anymore. So what do we do if we don't have our go-to strategies to cope with life? Well, you could just let it all go and connect into the lightest version of yourself so that you have that sense of knowing. And that's what she's there to remind us of. Interestingly, she's in a conjunction with the South Node, showing that we've actually already and always been there anyway. We've just forgotten that we are maybe divine, or maybe that we are connected to all that is, or that we are connected to our internal knowing, our internal guidance system. So she's reminding us. So it's like, as we come out of this density that is holding us back or teaching us something we need to be able to release, actually this knowing, this sense of what everything is about, is always there and has always been there. Now, Sphinx is an interesting one, because, when I saw the word Sphinx, I thought, oh, well, that's Egyptian. And it's very much about royalty and power. The Sphinx, I always think of this like level of majesty. But in Greek, it also means to squeeze and to tighten up. And I saw that reference many times. It says, this name may be derived from the fact that lions kill their prey by strangulation, biting the throat of prey and holding them down until they die. Isn't that interesting? Because, we've got these time perspectives that are in our face. And maybe the time perspective that is in our face right now is that we've almost got used to the feeling of being, and I don't want to make any light about strangulation or any kind of physical abuse or being trapped or anything. However, a lot of people, I think, well, maybe I just talk about myself from my own unique perspective. The Western life appears to strangle every bit of joy in life out of you. I'm not necessarily talking about the bits where we feel like we're empowered to make a difference, make a change. But, when you think about like taxation, the fact that we all need to work to be able to live, that we all need to own a house or pay for a house, somehow pay for our rent. We've all accepted this as completely normal. Of course, it's totally normal. And yet every other creature, apart from the ones that we've put under our care, knows themselves, knows what they need to eat, how they need to eat. They all follow a complete, every wild creature that you see that hasn't been eaten or attacked. Okay. There is a price to our safety in keeping ourselves safe. Most of us have grown fat, weak, allergic, ill, sick, depressed. This is supposed to be feel good, but what I observe is that nature seems to be fine without us. And actually, when we get involved, something in the way we are living, something in the way we have decided what is normal and right, and this is just how it is. We all go to work, kids go to school, we all pay to be here. No other creature pays to be here. They don't have to work a job that doesn't actually already make sense to their species. So, when I read this, I thought, wow, the feeling of being strangled or having something on your shoulders, that could be a very real experience, not necessarily linking it to royalty or power, or am I? But anyway, interesting that Sphinx and Echeclus, which is about it being in your face and seeing it from a much longer timeline, that maybe it's always been like this, it currently is, and what's going to happen in the future. Interesting. We cannot ignore these things anymore. And maybe the feeling of the heaviness or, it's really hard to be able to shake this feeling of being trapped into a particular way of expressing. Maybe we're coming to the end of this pattern. Who knows? And if we do, I'm sure it'll be replaced with something else because we're a sucker for growth, aren't we? And then we've got a couple of other asteroids I've put in as well. So Dionysus is right in between Jupiter and Uranus. And interestingly, it's quite a freeing asteroid, a freeing person. So, Jupiter and Uranus are about expansion and change, innovation, and these two together are absolutely freeing and liberating. We're coming into the freeness. Dionysus is like classed as mad, has gone completely bonkers. But if essentially Dionysus has lost the frame of reference that everybody else is holding on to. So they're seen as boozing and hedonistic, orgiastic. They're also very natural. Now, I'm not also saying, oh yeah, let's like drop everything and become really hedonistic and unless that absolutely suits you. But it does hint at that nature is wild and that there is a cost to our safety. There is a cost to having everything neatly organized. It goes against life because it is keeping everything static and in a particular pattern when in actual fact, life is about growth and change. So interesting that Dionysus is actually in a conjunction with the two most liberated planets currently. We've also got Nessus. Now, this is an interesting one because Nessus has come up quite a few times. Nessus is having a long, slow traverse through the sign of Pisces. And Nessus is a bad character. Nessus covets other people's experiences, is very jealous and takes action to enact his revenge on people that have got stuff that he wants. In a fit of anger, and just downright nastiness. Even when he's been given chances, he's often bitten the hand of people that have helped him. There are some similarities between Nessus and Ixion, but Nessus is really abusive. If you're ever looking at a chart from the perspective of abuse and gaslighting, Nessus is often in a very, very core place. But he poisons to death people, or in particular, who was it? I can't remember who it was now. The person that really upset him. It'll come to me another time. But anyway, Nessus is a sort of unfortunate character, really. He's in a conjunction with Saturn and Mars. So this is interesting. Are we taking our power back because we realize we've been poisoned, or that something has been hurting us quite purposefully? Are we becoming aware of other entities or beings or humans who have been spiteful? It's a sort of energy of spite. Now, Saturn and Mars, I've already spoken about in the April forecasts. Saturn and Mars coming together is kind of cold. It's very industrious. It gets a lot of things done, but it's not really tuning into the energy of milk and honey and kindness and looking after people. Having Nessus with this is not very nice. So there is also that going into it. Now, does that mean to say, that it is actively happening right now, or because it's connected into Echeclus and Sphinx in a really easy way? I think actually what's coming up is the awareness of maybe where we've been squeezed over time is in our face. But I mean, tune into it yourself and see what it means to you, because you may well have a story going on. But what I see here is any kind of cruelty or spitefulness that's been going on and perpetrated towards you, you get really clear about it. You can really, really see it. But again, it's useful to have the awareness of it, but maybe not to hold on to it, because then it takes you out of a feeling of present joy and peace, and it takes you right into that feeling victimhood. And I'm not sharing this for that purpose. Now, the last asteroid that is interestingly placed is Persephone. Now, she's actually the daughter of Ceres, and Ceres and Pluto, stroke Hades, they've got a big story together. I mean, they are brother and sister in mythology, and Persephone's her daughter. It's alleged that Hades kidnapped Persephone and took her into the underworld to be his queen. And she spends half her time with her husband in the underworld and then half her time with her mother, Earthside. So she's Earthside spring, summer. She's under the ground, autumn, winter, which is why Ceres kills all the vegetation back, because she's in grief. That's where the grief cycles come, and the cycles of on a natural way of growth and then die back. So Persephone brings up stories about abduction and duality, recognizing that life has these high aspects, these low aspects, and being able to work with that. It is what it is. She's also a queen. So is she a queen because she recognizes that this is how her life is? And is there some acceptance? Is that what makes her a queen? And being able to manage these energies. But she is also the herald of spring. So I wonder if, in recognizing that, yes, we are divine beings, but that we can connect into both light and dark, and maybe balance it so that we're not, as much as I talk about it's important to feel good, I don't want to be one of these bypassing people who are just saying, oh, all you need is happiness, and just focus on that and ignore the past, because that's really not where I am about. I think it's important to recognize where we've come on our journey, not to deny our past, because again, you're denying reality, you're denying what has happened. And I think when we're shutting ourselves off to things, we don't have the chance to accept what might have happened and to grow from that learning. So with Persephone here, I see this actually as a marker of accepting. We accept that we've had our down times, And we also accept that there are also up times as well. And I think when we can do that and be in the power of it rather than the story of it, we become a king or a queen in our own right. And it's maybe heralding a new spring for us. So there you go. There's just some of my thoughts about the total solar eclipse and the asteroids that feed into it. I must just put out a thank you to all the people that support the channel and support me. I love you all. I really appreciate your comments. The support comes in lots of different ways, and I just appreciate each of the different ways that you're impacting my life and helping me do this. So I'm getting out of breath now. I have to say, it's allergy season here in Portugal. All of these new things are coming up with the spring, and I think it's just getting to my sinuses. But anyway, lots and lots of love to you. I hope this is helpful in preparation and also explaining things in case things have come up in your consciousness. You're not alone. You're not imagining it. And you're obviously a very connected being to be able to connect in with everybody else and to feel what's going on. I really see this as a collective uprising, a collective raising up of our energy. Right, I'm off. Lots of love to you all. Bye for now.